and we're rolling right along into our preseason top 25. We've made our way up to number 21.
It's the Sports Nightly preseason top 25. Tonight.
From the 14 after the 5-yard penalty, Ritter trying to sprint toward the left sideline. Great block downfield, and he'll take it into the end zone untouched for a 14-yard touchdown run.
Number 21, the Cincinnati Bearcats.
And yep, we have the Bearcats at number 21 coming off of an 11-win season last year, including a Birmingham Bowl victory over Boston College. And here to talk to us about Cincinnati is Justin Williams from The Athletic. Justin, let's start with the Nebraska side of this thing. That game no longer going to happen after the Big Ten announced that the conference was just going to play conference games only. What was the reaction around the Bearcat camp when that came down the pike?
Yeah, definitely a big disappointment for them. You know, the American Athletic Conference, they play 8 conference games, and part of that is they're always encouraging those teams to schedule 2 Power 5 matchups if possible each season. And UC's had that the past couple of years, but this year Nebraska was their only P5 game on the schedule. Otherwise, it's a couple G5 and an FCS game, non-conference. So that was kind of their marquee trip. That was going to be their big stage. They were going to go out to Lincoln and, you know, be hopeful and have a chance to go up against a Big Ten team and certainly probably have a better chance than they did against Ohio State last year. But outside of that, they've had success in the past 2 seasons against power conference teams. And so for them to lose that game, that was their big marquee non-conference matchup, and that was a tough blow for them.
Okay, they lose that game. But Luke Fickle's still the coach. He turned down several opportunities after last season, having that amazing 11-win team. Talk about the momentum the program must have that Coach Fickle has decided to stay put.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously been a wild off season, and will probably only get stranger as the year goes on. But by far the biggest win that the Bearcats football program has had the past 2 years, winning 20-plus games, is that Luke Fickle decided to stay and be head coach this season. You know, he had very kind of public interest in an offer from Michigan State that he turned down. That was just kind of the most high profile. He had a lot of other interest from big programs this offseason and even last offseason after their first kind of breakout year. And he's talked for a couple of years now. He's an Ohio guy. He spent so much time at Ohio State, and he really felt Cincinnati was a great spot for him to go for his first head coaching job. And he's talked about how much he likes the city and the school and the setting, how happy his family is. But even though he was saying that, and even though he turned down some other interests, everyone always kind of had this short list of jobs that he would leave for. And when he didn't do that with Michigan State, and there was, a few reasons, there was some bad timing and things like that. But when he made that decision to stay, I think it was just another boost to the program. Certainly, in recruiting, they did a lot of great work after that this off season. And for a fan base that, he kind of resurrected this program, the Bearcats football program, after a couple down years, and for him to stick around with a really talented roster and, heading into what would be a normal season, I think people had very high hopes for it, and definitely UC fans are hoping that they still have a chance to show that in 2020.
His pedigree's on the defensive side of the ball, so I want to start there. Last year the Bearcats had a top 40 defense, and with all the names that are back, it should go up, right? I mean, the expectations ought to be pretty high on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and in 2018, I think they were top 10 or top 11 in defense. So it dipped a little bit last year. A big part of that was they lost James Wiggins, their starting safety, I think 2 days before the season opener last year, to a torn ACL. He's back and healthy. And they have just a really talented deep secondary. Ahmad Gardner, freshman cornerback who emerged last year, basically in the second half of the season, became a starter on that boundary position, was named to a few freshman All-American teams, had 2 essentially game-winning pick sixes for him last year, the biggest one in the win over UCF. He's back. They have Derek Forrest led the team in defense and tackles last year. He's back alongside Wiggins at safety. And they have a really talented defensive line. They literally bring every single person back from a unit that goes at least 8 deep up front. The question will be, they lost 2 starting linebackers. So that'll be kind of the big question going into this season, is how do they replace those guys? Wilson Huber, they've converted from a tight end to a linebacker, and he's flashed early. He's kind of the wild card in that group. But they have some talent there, and unfortunately they have talent kind of bookending bookending them at defensive line and secondary. So as good as this unit was in 2018 and even in 2019 for things like red zone defense, I mean, there's a belief that this could be the best defense the Bearcats have had in a long, long time heading into 2020.
Again, visiting with Justin Williams from The Athletic here on Sports Eye. We've got Cincinnati at number 21 in our preseason top 25. Let's flip over to the offensive side of the ball. I know the biggest loss was Michael Warren from the running back spot, but it sounds like they've got some bodies ready to jump in, including, an Alabama transfer into the program?
Yeah, Jerome Ford came up from Alabama. I mean, he was a really talented high school player out of Tampa, 4-star. He just kind of got lost in that Alabama backfield, which is not hard to do with all the first-round picks they turn out down there. So he's up, and he got immediate eligibility this year. Jared Doakes is a senior, and he'll kind of be the leader of that group. And honestly, up until a couple of years ago, he was seen as the guy who was going to be, the main bell cow for this offense. He got hurt before the 2018 season, ended up missing all of it, and that's when Michael Warren stepped in and emerged. And they're going to miss Warren. First of all, just from a reliability standpoint, I think he's had over 500 carries the past 2 years. And they certainly don't want to have to do that with a running back, feeding him that much. They want to spread it out. But he was so reliable and so stable, and just from a leadership standpoint, kind of set the tone from a toughness perspective for the Bearcats the past few seasons. He left early to go into the NFL draft, and they are going to replace him, they hope, with kind of a group of talented players, Doakes, Jerome Ford. They get Charles McClellan back, who looked really good as a freshman in 2018, missed all of last year with a torn ACL as well. And then they have just a few other young guys who are going to be fighting for carry. So as much as they're going to miss Warren's toughness and mindset, they think and hope that they have the bodies and the talent to maybe not replace him one-to-one, but kind of replace the productivity that he's given them.
Justin, wouldn't the leadership mantle kind of just be passed to the quarterback, a veteran quarterback for this team?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Luke Fickle, he's all about what he calls healthy competition. He wants people battling at every position for snaps and for a starting spot. And most coaches say that, but they don't want that for quarterback. And Fickle is different. He has said there's going to be a quarterback competition going into camp this year. Desmond Ritter is the established starter. This will be his third year starting. And he's just a dynamic, kind of terrifying player for defenses because what he can do with his legs. He's a great runner, long strider, really quick. He didn't, last year was his second year starting as a redshirt sophomore. He didn't kind of take some of the steps that I think a lot of people expected him to take. There are some reasons for that. He probably didn't progress as much as he wanted to as a passer. They also had tons of struggles on the offensive line. They had a receiver group that didn't really pan out in a few spots. So, I think the hope is that if he can make maybe a better jump going into his redshirt junior year with some of those extra pieces around him, everyone will get to see the player that really emerged as a freshman and won Freshman of the Year in the conference. But then right behind him, they have Ben Bryant, who's going to be a redshirt sophomore this year, the former Wisconsin commit. He was recruited by the Fickle staff and the Fickle regime and just has a rocket of an arm. He actually started in a game against Memphis for him last year when Ritter was banged up towards the end of the season. And they have complete confidence in him as a starter and as a prospect. And, I think he's going to be given a chance to win the job. I think it'll be hard for him to unseat Ritter unless Ritter just takes a massive step back and knowing kind of the worker he is and how they feel about him. I don't expect that. But they feel pretty good going in with both of those quarterbacks heading into the season, battling out and hopefully making each other better. And then on top of that, they have the highest rated recruit in program history coming in. Evan Prater is a true freshman who I don't think they want to throw out there at quarterback this year, but it's definitely a lot of talent on the offense. So whether it's Ritter or if Ben Bryant's able to emerge, you're right, though. Those are going to be the guys who are counted on with Mike Warren gone to step up and lead the unit.
Yeah, interesting. All right, as we kind of see it, it's a battle of Cincinnati and UCF and the American. Is it that simple, or is Memphis still right there? How do you grade out the rest of this league?
Yeah, I think you have to put Memphis there. I realize they lost Norvell to Florida State, but they get Brady White, their quarterback, back. They have Gainwell at running back. They got their best wide receiver back. So I think you have to put them in that mix, and it'll be interesting this year because there's no divisions in the American with UConn gone. So it's just they're taking the top two teams to play in that championship game, which